All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I am here with Jazzlyn Cotton. Jazzlyn, how are you doing tonight?
Good, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for time to talk.
Sure, of course.
Awesome. So, Jazzlyn is close friend, someone that I've known for a little bit now, and recently has expanded and gone out west to California, and currently out there doing some kind of like production stuff in the media industry, if you will. But a very interesting person with a lot of good thoughts on various different topics. I'm excited for the conversation, but that's a little bit about who Jaslyn is. But do you mind kind of giving a little bit of a background on who you are, what you're doing, all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, this question, it's like I don't ask this question. uh, yeah, so I'm originally from Michigan, born and raised sort of. I lived in like two other states, and just recently, about 6 months, graduated from Oakland University. I moved out to Los Angeles. So that was this past June. And I've just been kind of here networking, getting to know people in entertainment industry and stuff like that. So it's all fun, all fun.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of good stuff. So, yeah, no, it's I don't know. I guess we've talked. I mean, we talk a lot for anyone listening. We talk a lot like outside of this recording. So, some of this like we've had a lot of conversations on. But like, I guess for anyone listening, was the move to LA, was that something that was more exciting or like nerve-wracking for you?
Well, I'm someone who like craves change,
Yeah.
so it was more exciting than nerve-wracking, I think. But I think there were some factors that made it nerve-wracking, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just like things going on like right before I moved and like during the move and stuff like that. So that made it a little nerve-wracking, but for the most part, it was more exciting. I was kind of nervous if I was gonna be able to meet a lot of people and make friends easily, but so
Mm-hmm.
far so good. So yeah, so yeah, it's been exciting, I guess.
That's good. And I mean, I think like you said, you're someone that likes change, so going to somewhere kind of completely different, like LA is a big change, obviously, but then with kind of your degree and interests, like the entertainment industry is I mean, kind of like that's like the hub, LA. So I mean, that was a big reason for you moving there, right? Just for the networking and opportunities out that way.
Yeah, I would say so. It's kind of confusing because like you think you know what you want and then you go like and move towards it and then you're there and you're like, what do I actually want? So that's just kind of what
Hmm.
I've been going through. But for the most part, that was yeah, that was kind of the goal.
So I feel like we might be getting into some good stuff right away. You kind of mentioned the idea of like you think you want something and like you whether it's like physically like move towards it or just like move in that direction with like your time or whatever, like sometimes it seems like maybe that's not what you wanted or maybe it's not like what you seemed, and it sounds like that's kind of something that maybe you're going through a little bit.
Yeah, just in terms of like, how do I put this? Just in terms of like, it's not necessarily that like I thought I wanted it and then was disappointed. It's just
Hmm.
there's been so many factors and things going on internally and in my personal life where I'm like, what do I actually want out of life and what will actually make me happy? And
Hmm.
at this point, I'm not really sure if what I originally wanted is what I still want. I wouldn't say that I have what I originally wanted yet, so it's kind of hard to tell, but it's like I still don't fully I still don't fully know if that's like the right path, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think? not necessarily even for you, but just in general, do you think there is like a right path for us?
Not necessarily. I think there's like an infinite amount of paths, right, that you can
Mm-hmm.
choose from, but I think there are some journeys that you can take and some paths that you can choose that lead closer to inner fulfillment, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. Um, and I'm just not sure if right now if I'm on that path yet. So that's my goal is to choose a path and take a path that leads me to more like peace and joy,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just like material fulfillment, right? Like I want like inner fulfillment. I feel like that's the most important. So I'm just still like in that state of trying to figure out if where I am and where I'm going will take me there.
Yeah, and I think that that's an interesting point that you brought up about, I don't know, I think the world that we live in, social media, media in general, it's very easy to get caught up in the materialistic parts of life or just like what we can buy or what we can show off or what we can post or whatever. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with enjoying those things or those like luxuries of life or pieces of life, but it's like I think that when you can kind of like detach and realize that like while those might be nice, like it's not really what drives happiness or like fulfillment. I think that that's kind of like a game changer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I feel like because it's all so surface level, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
see a picture and we see a video and we think, wow, this person's life is perfect. But it's like there's so much that goes into that one picture or that one reel or that one story or video. And what I found a lot of times, I talk to people, like I know so many people just going through like a tough time right now, right? But
Mm-hmm.
but when they post, it's obviously like they cherry pick like the happy moments or the moments where they look their very best or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh wow, like you seem like so happy and like things seem like so good. And then behind the scenes, it's like, oh, like this is like the worst week ever,
Mm-hmm.
But there's this like one picture and this one video that makes it seem like it's all perfect, right? And I think we all kind of want that sort of like we want people to see our lives as beautiful and perfect or lovely or whatever, but it's it's so impossible.
Yeah.
And um, that's just the one thing about social media, like you just can't trust it. And um, I just I don't think people should really go on social media and think like I'm not doing enough with my life and I'm not doing this and I'm not going here and all of these things when there's so much more behind like those like that one post.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think like the thing that I'm still trying to figure out, I mean, at 26 is like, why do we like seek that external validation or like, why do we want to? And I mean, like, I'm guilty of it too. Like, why do we post things on social media that makes it look like we're having the time of our lives or like everything's, and obviously, like, I don't think any of us want to like scroll social media and see like the saddest, most like depressing things people are going through, but like, it's kind of like, I just struggle with the idea of like with how much and the things that like we select to post, like is anyone truly like authentic to themselves or to like the world, right? Like, or are we just like putting on this front or this mask of like this is how I want to be perceived? And it's like, why are we doing that? Because like at the end of the day, like who cares? Or like who are we trying to impress? Or like just like why do we do the things we do?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think another point is that like we can't even control how we're perceived.
Yeah.
Um, like at least at the end of the day. And I think it just comes down to the fact that we are a social species, like
Mm-hmm.
like regardless of how individualistic or whatever we are, like at the end of the day, we are beings who like crave community and connection,
Yeah.
at least at our core, and we think, I think maybe a common subconscious thought that comes up when we are seeking that external validation, like via social media or whatever, is that, oh, well, if these people, you know, which is, it's just so funny, like, side note, because there's so many people that we follow or that follow us on social media that we don't even know, right?
Yeah.
But, but like, oh, if all of these people just see like this perfect side of my life or like see my life as this or as I want them to, then they'll like me more and I'll have more recognition and I'll
Mm-hmm.
feel better about myself. And it's sort of like they, like, we have this idea, like we see our lives in one way. You know, we see ourselves in one way and we see our lives in one way. And what we want is for, I think, well, this is just generally speaking, I feel like what we probably want is people to tell us that our lives are better than that, or
Yeah.
that um, we have it like much better than we think we do, right? Like this sort of
Mm-hmm.
like tell me something different, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like that's what it comes down to, honestly.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. And it's just I don't know. I mean, if I had all the answers, I don't even know if we'd be having this conversation. I might be like some rich theory per having like the
Yeah,
answers to like why we do the things we do in like socialization. But I think you're right. Like we're a social creature and like we want that like connection and community. And I think that like we want I don't know, maybe it's like maybe it comes back to like not in a negative way, but just like ego in general. Like we
absolutely.
just you know, we just have this perception and we want others to perceive us a certain way and we want to be told that maybe it's better than it is or just get that validation that way.
Absolutely. It always comes back to ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this um idea of identity, for instance, like we want to identify, or a lot of people like to identify as like a good person or a rich person or an extrovert or an introvert or like good vibes or whatever the case is. Um, if
Mm-hmm.
something if something threatens that sense of identity, then we don't know what to do with that because we're so tied to
Right.
our egos, to our identities. So if we get to a point where we're like, oh, I did something, like maybe I'm not a good person, and then we go down this like spiral and we have this like inner crisis because we're so to that identity, so we strongly identify. We get very defensive, very
Yeah.
lost, and so we are constantly seeking validation for how we identify. I feel like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That is very well put. And something that I guess I'm just curious on is like off the record, you and I have a lot of conversations similar to like what we've been talking about already, and just I don't know, we'll get theoretical or existential or just like talking about different just like philosophies and stuff like that. So like what has led you to holding the beliefs that you have or like what's influenced you to like just have these kind of like mindsets and opinions that you have or perspective you have?
um, well, um, well, it's funny because I was like I didn't realize it or like understand that it was this until like years later, but I was basically meditating by the time I was like 3 or 4. You know, I
Okay.
would just, I was so existential even as a child,
Yeah.
and I would sit there like in my room or something or in the living room, and I would be like, what is the answer to the universe? Basically, I would be like,
Yeah.
like I feel like my theory as a young child, right, when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old was I am the only real person and nothing else actually exists. that was my theory as a very young child. I don't know like where I was in my past life. I don't know if I was
Yeah.
like if I died a monk or something, but I was sitting there having these thoughts at like the youngest age, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember like I would get to a point where I would just like I would be meditating so hard, I guess, if you will, and I
Yeah.
would be like, okay, I think I know the answer to the universe now, you know? Um, and my whole life it's just been that sort of skepticism about like what is and isn't real and what is out there. And I grew up in like a Christian family, so it was this like religion was a big deal and like these stories and parables and all of that and like heaven and God, spirit and all of these things. And then, the older I got and not to mention like throughout like my entire life from a super duper young age as well, like I was dealing with so much like trauma and you know things that people shouldn't have to go through at all, but especially like super duper young kids,
Mm-hmm.
And um, I started to really, by the time I was in like late middle school, like early high school, I was really questioning religion. And I started to be, especially like after my mom passed away, I started to really hate religion. Like I
Sure.
actually had like a huge like disdain for it after like certain traumatic events occurred. And so anytime anyone would bring up religion or be like, oh, like I believe in this or that, I would like sometimes like it would like I would take it personally almost, and I wouldn't say it out loud, but in my mind I would be like, oh, this is like I can't believe this person's believing in this and that and that, and I was like I was not a great person as a child, I guess, constantly like questioning people and their intentions and everything like that. But um, then in 2017, I met a friend who was like like we had a lot of the same beliefs in terms of spirituality and things, and just like this lifelong journey of like what is real, why are we here, what is this, what is God actually, and all of these things. And we had like a very similar belief system and all of that. I wasn't like traumas and all of that situations that entire life I wasn't in the right to love correctly, even as a friend. And so our relationship turned like very toxic, and I was dealing with a lot of mental issues and all of that. And it really that relationship, that friendship had like really taught me because this person, she was very into like forgiveness. A Course in Miracles. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's this book. It was almost like a Bible in a way, and
Mm-hmm.
it's super profound. But I was so against it because I was like, oh, it seems like religion and things like this, and it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so um, after like I lost a lot of my friends, including this one at the end of 2018, I was kind of like at rock bottom, like the lowest I'd ever been.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think, like I have nothing right now, and I don't really have anyone right now, but I'm still here and I'm here for a reason. And I started to like really think about, like what that old friend would talk about, like forgiveness and things like that, and liberation and love and compassion and just listening and things like that, just like really honing in on my own ego and self-awareness and patience and sorry, that's a dog.
You're good.
um, just like practicing like all of these things that I just never did, and um, I I'm still honestly like learning from that time period and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to love correctly and all of that. And I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to the fact that, like, I have lost a lot of people and I have also hurt a lot of people. And yet, like, in both of those circumstances, like, these are the people I loved the most, you know? So I got to a point where
Yeah.
it was like, I want to be loved more than I am loving. And why is that? And that's sort of like what kind of triggered this whole healing journey that I'm still honestly currently on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, to end that, you were saying, you know, that what kind of started the healing journey that you're still on. Do you think, whether it's your own journey or anyone's journey, like, do you think the healing journey ever actually does end, or do you think it's just ongoing?
I think it's ongoing because I
Yeah.
think throughout our, like, when you really think about what life is and all of that, like, throughout our lives, we're constantly going through situations that we will always need to go from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Life can be perfect, you know,
Right.
like, yeah, we have this event or this situation or this relationship that we want to heal from, but then, like, as we're on that healing journey, other things obviously are going to start happening and occurring in our lives that we'll have to heal from as well. So the healing journey never really ends because, like, at the end of the day, I think life is the healing journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you just said on that. I think that it's like, I don't know. I mean, certainly you have, I know on a personal level, like, you've gone through a lot of different experiences, and you know that I have, and, you know, anyone listening probably has gone through their own experiences, you know, good, bad, in between, and everything like that. And I think it's like, it's tough, and you probably don't want to hear this when you're going through something rough, but it's like, the human experience in life, like, you need to have all of it, like the good moments, the bad moments, the stagnant moments, like, it all kind of builds this, like, perspective and perception of, like, how we see life and that journey and that healing process. And, like, I mean, anything that's bad that's happened to you, like, I'm not happy that it happened to you, or anything that's bad that's happened to me, like, I'm not happy I necessarily went through it, but it's kind of like those are usually pivotal times or moments that really kind of help us grow or bring some awareness to our lives. Or I think, like, even something that you and I have been talking about a bit, like, outside of this recording recently, is just like the idea of putting things in perspective and, like, what truly matters, right? Like, in life. And I think not that we necessarily get it confused, but I think as humans, it's very easy for us to lose sight in what truly matters until something, like, triggers us to rethink it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's honestly how I got to this point of, like, is
Hmm.
this where I want to go in my life this summer? Because so much has happened just this year
Yeah.
that has really reminded me, honestly, of that time period of 2018, which was like the lowest point of my life, you know? So, like,
Hmm.
I've been going through, like, um, I guess, like, this past summer, since the year started, honestly, 2022 in general has been very reflective in a way of 2018, and it's given me some wake up calls and some self awareness of, like, what do I still need to change? What do I still need to grow from? What thought patterns do I still hold on to that I need to release in order to love people more? And honestly, that's kind of like what I started to realize matters most to me personally isn't necessarily career and riches and fame and reputation, social media followers and all of that, but people, like
Hmm.
community and culture and connection. And I found that, like, my happiest times this summer it was with people that I love and care about, who love and care about me. Even during my hardest times, like, what made those hard times not completely soul shattering, not at least it was close, but not there. But what made them not so soul shattering was the help and the compassion that I got from the people around me, right? And
Yeah.
even just people that I met in LA since I've gotten here, and friendships that I've like that have grown since I've gotten here. That's what's really shown me like that's what's most important. That is how I've gotten here. That is um how I have grown into the person I am, right? Like I was saying earlier, that friend from 2017 that I had, that's kind of like kickstarted this whole like I want to change sort of thing, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
it's always like the people that I love and care about most, or the people that love and care about me, or just people in general, honestly, that that's what matters at
Yeah.
the end of the day, is that community and that connection with others, and not just people, honestly, connection with like the universe in general, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like going outside and connecting with the earth and connecting with whatever you believe in, you know. I feel like that's at the end of the day, that's what keeps us alive, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And I think it's like that connection piece is so big. Connecting with others in human form, I guess you could say, but also, like you said, connecting
Mhm.
with the environment, with nature, with your surroundings, like just being present and being one with the moment and the energy that you're surrounded by and the environment. Like, I think that we sometimes discredit how much of an influence our setting has on us, and whether that's like our setting, like, I don't know, if you're in an office or if you're in a cubicle classroom, whatever, like that setting, like the physical setting, but also like the people. Like, even
Mhm.
if like you live in New York City and you take a train every day to work, and like that's how you commute, and you're always like the same people, you see on the train because they're commuting to their work. Like, if those people, even if you don't like really know them, are like negative, like that has more impact on our lives than we realize. And I think it's just like having that awareness of like the importance of like true connection and awareness and energy, right? As much as people might be like, oh, like energy, that's very like hokey or whatever. It's like it's so underrated in the sense that like we don't give it enough credit for what it can do for us.
No, absolutely. It's integral. I feel like even
Mm-hmm.
it's energy is everything, you know,
Yeah.
and it can change us in all sorts of ways, like mentally, physically, honestly, spiritually. It's really important to be in an environment that aids you in your joy and aids you in
Mm-hmm.
bringing you peace and making you feel cared about, right? Like
Yeah.
if you are at a job where, and it's like, yeah, of course, like we need jobs because we live in a world where we have to like pay to survive, which is
Sure.
so, which sucks. But you know, the
Yeah.
reality is that we have to pay to survive, so we need to work for it. And it's like if you're at a job though where you are just like miserable and the people in charge of you make you feel the absolute worst, and the people around you are just like careless or don't pay you any mind or anything like that really affects you, even if it's like
Yeah.
little by little every day. It's in the long run, like you're going to realize like I am completely and utterly drained.
Yeah.
And it's so important to just find those places and those environments where you can feel okay, and where the people make you feel okay and at least a
Mm-hmm.
little cared about or loved, right? I think that's really important, especially like when it comes to a work environment, because we spend like what, like eight, some people spend 10, 12 hours of their
Yeah.
day at work, you know, like that's most of your life
Yeah.
almost. So yeah, I think it's important to just really hone in on like what do I want out of my connections, whether it's at work, whether it's in your personal life, like what do you want out of your connection with other people?
Yeah, exactly. And like something that you and we talk about quite often, honestly, is just like in terms of energy, just like being protective of it. Like, I think I'll put us on blast a bit. Like you and I were both like giving people, and we're
Mm-hmm.
very generous with our time, with our energy, and you know sometimes that's either taken advantage of or it's abused or just like
Yeah.
you know like we will give until we're completely depleted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's been situations in both of our lives and maybe even like still in our lives where like people will know like we're drained but they'll still like want to take and take, and I think that's just like for us, like we talk about being protective with our time and our energy because it's like it's sacred. Like we need to just protect our energy and save it for what really fills us up and gives us that joy, because it's like we want to give that joy to everyone else, but like we need it for ourselves. Like we can't, like I know it's like a super cliche, but like you can't pour from an empty cup kind of mentality of like
Mm-hmm.
we need to fill ourselves up, and whether that's a job, whether that's roommates, whether that's your personal friends, you know, significant other, family, whatever, like you just need to choose the people, the connections, and how you spend your time and energy wisely. Because it's like, and I'm not saying like if you have someone that like drains you, like if it's a family member or something, like you need to like cut them off and never talk to them again. Or like if it's like a childhood best friend, like you just need to like ghost them and like, you know, never talk to them again. But just like be conscious of what is adding to you and what's subtracting, and then like try to just like put your time where you're getting that like added, you know, benefit or energy. Because I think like we were saying, you know, there's certain things in life that matter a lot more than we realize at a lot of our time. So just like realizing like what's truly important, and like I know that for me personally it's like I I mean we all, you know, are living our life right now, like we want to maximize our happiness and spending time with the people that we love or that love us, and like what's the point of focusing on things that just hurt us or bring us down, right? When we have so much other that we can focus and spend our time on.
Yeah, and you know, to that, it's really it's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, like you know,
Yeah.
um, it's so much easier said than done, especially when like there is a lot of good that we can focus on, but if there are certain situations that are bad or depleting, and those
Mm-hmm.
are like begging for our attention, in a way, if they're like really demanding our attention, it's hard to focus on the good that's around it, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out. Obviously, I feel like everyone is. I feel like that's part of life is just figuring out like how do I focus on the good in the present and the love
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. Um, and I think, you know, kind of going back to what you said earlier, like you can't pour from an empty cup. I think the reason why I think self-love has to come first is because that's the only, if you filling yourself and surrounding yourself with people that fill you, that's the only way you can give to the fullest extent to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me that's so important, and it's a sign, as I was talking about earlier, to just love people correctly, love people in the right ways. And if I am sitting here in my dark little room in my in my apartment and I'm like sad about something and I'm just sad and only sad. I mean, obviously, I think it's super duper important to sit and actually feel your emotions. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you can't move on from them and release them if you can't like, feel them fully. But if I dwell on them, if I'm just like, yeah. like it's not bothering me anymore technically, but I'm still sad about it because I'm choosing to still think about it and hold on to it. Um, then I'm not allowing myself to heal. And if I'm not
Yeah.
allowing myself to heal, then I'm not allowing myself to love in the way that I want, like myself or other
Mm-hmm.
people, you know? And I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And to anyone that's listening, or maybe this is a message I need to tell myself, or maybe this is a message that you need to hear, or whatever, like whoever's listening needs to hear it. It's like the best reminder I can give is just like let go.
Let
Like we
go.
need to be able to let go and feel at peace with letting go. And I think like, I mean, I'll call myself out. I know that like I can easily ruminate on things, or just like hyper fixate on something that's going on, or just like I just don't always let things go as much as I should. And I think it's like, and whether that, like, fill in the blank with what that could be. That could be a situation going on, a relationship, a friendship, like a work relationship or something, like whatever it can be. But like just let it go. Or like if someone, I don't know, like if you're driving and someone cuts you off, like just let it go. Like I know that I've probably ruminated all day and let that ruin my whole day. And I'm sure people
Mhm.
listening probably let like one thing, like a train stopping them, or someone cutting them off, or like someone messing up their order at the restaurant or whatever, like just completely ruin their whole day, or like sidetrack them. But just like, we just need to let go and just like detach, and not be so attached to the results or our perception of the situation, and just learn to let go.
Yeah, yeah, and there's this, I don't know who said it, but it's something that I think about anytime that I have like a hard time letting go of something.
Mm-hmm.
There's this quote that I read once, like years ago, and it says something along the lines of everything that I've ever had to let go of has claw marks on it. you
Mm.
know yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I responded when I first read it, right? Like I cling to things until I can't, like until I have like absolutely no choice.
Right.
At least that's been a common theme of my life. I'd noticed that, like, on my mother's side of the family, at least like in my lineage, right? Depending on how far back you want to go, like addiction kind of runs in it, right? And I've noticed that, like growing up, I was always like, oh, I don't want to get into drugs or alcohol. I don't want that, like I don't
Mm-hmm.
want that kind of dependency on anything that can ruin my life. And yet, I found myself addicted to validation. I found myself addicted to people.
Yeah.
My close, I became super, super codependent on other people. And that's been the hardest thing to let go of is other people. I think it always is.
Yeah. It is.
And it is. um, and, shout out to my friend Kat out here in LA. But ever since I met her, like we'll be hanging out and something will happen that's like really irritating. Like someone will cut us off, or like they won't have the thing that we want at like whatever restaurant or whatever that we go to. She'll be like, you know what? It's fine. Like I let it go. It's not important, right? And like she does that, like these little minute things, like all the time, and it really like inspires me, even though they're so like small. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like it doesn't matter, like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like how much do I really care about this?
Yeah.
And especially when it's a person who hurts us over and over again, and someone that you try to talk to or someone that you try to communicate with that just doesn't, and I've run into that a couple times this summer. It's also like, why is it so hard to let go of someone that hurts us, right? Like
Yeah.
why do we want their attention and validation so badly compared to like all the other people around us who love us and care about
Yeah.
us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it really again comes down to ego,
Yeah.
and just that sense of like security and identity and safety. But I think, we do a lot more damage when we're holding on to things that aren't holding on to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's like, I'm sure everyone's heard the expression like with whatever, a job, a relationship, a friendship, whatever, it's like a two-way street, right? Where it's like
Hmm.
it's give and take, and as much as we, I think, should strive for equity in terms of like 50-50, like the reality of it is it's probably not going to sit at 50-50, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes you might take 60 and only be able to give 40, and then the roles reverse and stuff. And I think it's just like realizing that the same, going back to energy, the same energy that you put out, you should be receiving back equally or more. Or if you're not at capacity to do it equally, like at a comparable rate, I think that it's just like you said, we get hurt by people or situations, or experiences or whatever, but like those are the ones that are like hardest to let go, which like makes no sense. But I think it's like it makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense, right? Because I think it's like the other concept of it that maybe people can resonate with a little bit or something is like the idea of like we could be given 99 compliments and one negative thing could be negative comment could be said, and like we hyperfixate on that one negative thing, or like it's
Hmm.
like everything else doesn't matter because that one person hated our outfit or something, right? Like
Hmm.
it's just like I mean, it goes back to the ego and just like seeking validation from the outside, when it's like we have so much love and support or equity in situations, but it's just like those ones that don't, those are the ones that like hurt the most and the ones that we hold on the hardest. And it's like either kind of like with that quote that you said about like the holding on to things that let us claw marks, it's like we either hold on till like we literally can't hold on any longer, or we just have to like learn to let go and detach. And I think that it's like some of the things that we hold on to for so long, like in the moment, like obviously you don't see it, but like retrospectively, like you can look back and it's almost like laughable. Like you're like, why was I holding on
Hmm.
to that so hard for so
Absolutely.
long?
Absolutely. Um, yeah. it's it is laughable sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's what I so it's not just um us like holding on to people either. I notice
Hmm.
it's also like the things that we demand from other people or that other people demand from us. That's just not. It's just like too. It's impractical. There's this
Yeah.
quote that says there's this show I used to watch on HBO. Well, I don't know if it's on HBO anymore, but it's called Infinity Train, and there's this quote in there where one of the characters said, "I am who I am, and I can't give you more than that."
Mm.
And I think what we need to realize is that like if someone is asking too much of us, we have to let them know that like we are giving what we can.
Yeah.
I think that's what's important. And also, the flip side of that is that like we need to realize like why am I seeking so much from a person when these are things that I should be giving myself, right? Like when we
Yeah.
are constantly demanding like time or attention or conversation from someone, um, and yet it's like, why? Why do
Yeah.
I need that from this, at least like this one specific person or this relationship or that relationship when it's not like not I wouldn't say it's not important, but it's not um life it doesn't it's not like life altering,
Yeah.
like you can talk to anyone or sometimes like there are times when like everyone's busy, right? So you have to sit with yourself and I think that's important as well, right? But it's
Yeah.
like we are who we are and we cannot give more than that.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of times the things that we are holding on to aren't they they aren't even real,
Yeah.
Like they're ideas that we have of a person rather than the person themselves. They're
Hmm.
um you know, just these like intangible concepts that like aren't they aren't real, you know, and we're holding on to them and we're like praying and begging for them to manifest, for them to be real, for them to, you know, be enough, and it's not going to be, you know, like we have to like really
No.
look at what's in front of us and
Hmm.
what's really important and what's really happening. We
Yeah.
have to also like look at people for who they truly. A lot of times I say this, I was going to say we have to look at people for who they truly are, but like most people aren't who they truly are. You
Right.
know, most people are still figuring it out and are just, you know, trying to embody the person that they want to be. And I think everyone is confused on like who
Hmm.
they really are. So instead of saying that, I'll say you also have to look at and accept people for what they give you and for how they express themselves to you. They can't and they aren't going to give you more than that.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of good like nuggets that you said in that. One thing that kind of just like stood out to me is just like the ideas that we have, the ideas that we build up of people or things or jobs or experiences, like I feel like it's like we almost do a disservice to that person or to that thing by like hyping it up so much, like
Mhm.
in our minds or our expectations, or like the expectations that we have of something, they're not in line with what the actual experience is. And I mean, there's a lot of different examples probably rattle off that like resonate with me, but like just a quick one that I'll share is just like to anyone that doesn't know this, like I grew up a Michigan State fan. Like I always loved Michigan State, wanted to go to Michigan State
Go
for
blue.
college. Right. That's fair. So I was like always this big like state fan, and like that was like the dream college to go to and stuff. And like I applied, I got into state, and then like I toured, and it was a good tour, but I was just that's it. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I just like gave it this such like unfair expectations that I had for it that were like I did university disservice by like if it wasn't like getting chauffeured around on like unicorns and like having red carpets everywhere it wasn't like a good school. So I think it's like we do that to things, we do that to colleges, obviously with that example, we do that to jobs, we do that to people, and like just like you can only give what you have, and like just I don't think we just need to realize that like you said, people don't have anything figured out. Like I don't care what anyone says. Like I don't care what you see on social media. I don't care who you talk to, or like your best friend that is in like med school and they're like super happy, like whatever. I mean, I don't think no one truly has their life figured out. And like, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm targeting the people around our age right now, like in their 20s, but I think like even if you ask people like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even like 60s, I mean, like, yeah, maybe someone's been doing the same job for like 40 years and they're content, but like, do they truly have things figured out? Probably not. Like, I think that we all just fall guilty in that, like, people have things figured out and just we have these expectations of others, or like, we have this expectation that, like, so and so has everything figured out. And it's like, I'm behind because I don't. But it's like no one has it figured out. No one knows what they're doing. Like the world is very weird with pandemics and with things going around, just like socially and just the state of the world is it's a time to be alive. So it's a trip. So we're all just doing our best. And I think like we need to give ourselves the same grace that we want to give to others, but also like just know that like what we're going through internally, like other people are too, even if they don't like present it the same way or in a visible way.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, and I think one thing about us as people, like we're dreamers, you
Yeah.
know, like we're a social species, but we're also like we're dreamers. Like we're
Hmm.
constantly imagining and coming up with ideas and, you know, trying to figure out like what we want and like we have this like this dream of what this job will be like, what this person will be like, what this relationship will be like, and we
Yeah.
can't help it, you know. But
Right.
I think
Right.
when we start attaching to those dreams, to those ideas, rather than what is being shown to us, what is like right in front of us, that's when we start to lose touch with not only ourselves but with that connection as well,
Yeah.
to whatever it is. And I think, I don't know, I think it's so important to realize that like it's perfectly okay if things don't turn out how you planned. A lot of
Hmm.
times, if you allow it to be, it's oftentimes it's better. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not, and that's okay. And that's kind of circles back to the whole like learning to let go thing. Like
Hmm.
it's it's oh, especially in this time period, right? Like so much is happening and about to happen, and people are trying to figure out, you know, like how they're going to react and how they're going to
Yeah.
live through it. A lot of people, honestly, myself included, probably everyone included, like we're all just trying to distract ourselves from
Yeah.
the things that are going on or about to go on and all of that. And I think the more that we start to focus on, you know, the real connections, the real love,
Hmm.
like the reality of the people in our lives and those connections in our lives, the more we start to find a little bit of joy in the little
Yeah.
things. And I think that's what's most important, especially again, like in this time period.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. And I know that the two things I'm about to say, like you hear me say all the time. We talk about it, I say it to you. And if you've been listening to the podcast, like I'm sure I've said it, you know, here and there sprinkled in. And if we talk personally, I'm sure you hear me say it really regularly. But like the two things that I've learned just like within the last 2 years that might sound like silly, but they're just like mantras to me these days is just like open to everything, attached to nothing, and just like
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that you ever truly know is that you never know. Like you don't know.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh man. I mean, you
yeah,
know that I say that all the time too.
exactly. And that's why we connect, right? Because we have like the same like sayings and expressions that we live through. But I think that's just like, I mean, without going another like 2 hours about each of those, like open to everything, attached to nothing. Just the idea of like just having that openness to literally everything in life, every experience, every opportunity, every individual, and just like not being attached to the results or not being attached to your perceptions or expectations. And just like you said, like when we can let go of those, like, and things maybe don't go according to plan and we let go, like more times than not, things either are better or they work out just fine, or it's not
Mm-hmm.
as big of a deal as we might think it is. And just like the whole like you never know, the only thing that we do know is that you don't know kind of idea is just that
Mm-hmm.
like there's like life is just, I mean, there is no book on life. Like I can't tell you what tomorrow is going to look like for me. I can't tell you what tomorrow is going to look like for you, or a month or a year. Like no one knows. So it's like we're just in this like abundant life of like unknown and mystery. So it's like the only certainty, like as someone personally who chases after like certainties and structure, like it's just it doesn't exist. Like it's just like maybe you think it does, but it's like the perception of it. And it's like all we know is that you just don't know. Like you don't know anything that's gonna happen next, or you don't know how things are gonna play out. So you just need to like kind of like embrace the unknown and just like find peace and detachment in like what we think we know and just realize we don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I say it again, like all the time. Like the only thing I'm sure of is that I'm sure of nothing, you know?
Yes.
And it's it's okay to not know. I think that's another thing is that we think and assume that we control our lives,
Yeah.
right? But we don't. We
No.
control how we react. We control who we hold on to and let go of. We control our. I have. there's this friend I had, and she tweeted something once that like really stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it the past few days actually, and it's what is a person but a collection of choices?
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's true. Like the only thing we have control over are our choices, what we
Right.
choose to say or how we choose to think or all of those things. And it's perfect. Like, yeah, in a way, if you, in one perspective, it is scary. And the other
Mm-hmm.
perspective, it's nerve-wracking. It's exciting. But I like to stay just indifferent and just like be open to whatever comes, right? Because
Yeah.
everything that comes, like, I believe everything happens for a reason. I know a lot of people don't, but
Mm-hmm.
I do. I really do, and I think most of like everything that's ever happened in my life, good or bad, has added up to who I am at this very moment, you
Yeah.
know, and to how I think, and all of those things. And I like to say as well, and I was thinking about this earlier as well today, was that like a broken heart is an open heart, you know?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
in your time of crisis and lowness and destruction and brokenness and woundedness, there's all this openness, all these little crevices and cracks that you can let people in, where you can
Mm-hmm.
let love in, and that's the only thing that can enter those that will heal them.
Yeah.
The most important thing.
Yeah. I completely agree. And just one thing I wanted to touch on is you mentioned like that everything happens for a reason, and I'm in the same camp with that. Like I truly believe it, and I understand like why people don't. I understand that we experience trauma and tragedy, and we're kind of like, if everything happens for a reason, like what's the reason that I experienced this trauma or this loss or this, whatever happened? And maybe you get biblical with it and say like, if everything happens for a reason, and if there's like this ever loving God, like why would they let this tragedy happen? And like I understand
Mm-hmm.
why at times we may doubt like that everything happens for a reason, or why it might be frustrating, but I think that it's like, whether we realize it or not, or even if it's good, or even if it just completely sucks, like in the moment and even after the fact, it's like there is like, and I think, I don't know, maybe if that just helps me sleep at night, knowing, thinking that like everything happens for a reason, I think it's just like I've adopted that mentality that like, even the really terrible things, it's like there's a reason for it. Like something, like I'm supposed to go through this to help me with a different experience or to learn from something, or just like it's gonna make sense, maybe not now, but in time. And I think like something related to just like everything happens for a reason, and like the right time, right time mentality is again something that we've talked about and I've brought up a couple times on the podcast, is just like the idea of like the soulmates that we interact with and encounter throughout our lives. And like a lot of times people might think like, oh, your soulmate is like the person that you married and like love for the rest of your life. And like, yeah, sure, that can be a soulmate, but I think it's like it just goes way beyond that. And it can be
Mm-hmm.
people, it can be places, it could be things, it could be that extracurricular you did in high school that gave you so much peace and joy for like 4 years. It could be the the one bedroom studio apartment that you moved in your 20s and like felt the most alive you ever did. It could be the childhood best friend that you biked around the neighborhood with. It could be the person that you fall in love with and marry. Definitely it can be that too, but it can be anything. It can be a thing, a person, a place, an experience. And I think that like we encounter many of them throughout our lives. And it's like, it's just like the right person, the right thing at the right time. It's like exactly what we needed or who we needed or what we needed to go through to get through that time or to the next phase of life. So I think it's just like, just trusting in those and like embracing those things that happen in our lives, and we're like, wow, like this is wild, like this is exactly what I needed or wanted or asked for or whatever, and like just really lean into those experiences.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And sort of going back to the, how how not, or like what the reasonings behind why a lot of people don't believe that everything happens for a reason. I think we aren't mentally capable of understanding everything, you know? Like,
Yeah.
we are 3D beings in a vastly multi-dimensional universe, right? And I mean, I say it all the time as an example, but like people can literally only see like three colors, in white and
Yeah.
black. And we think that we can just find all of these answers to the universe and all of these answers to why things happen and why things are the way they are. And we get close. Like we've figured out a lot, you know, in terms of like the history of humanity, like where we are now. It's crazy how much that we've figured out and learned and everything. But when it comes to understanding existence, like our own existence, and the things that happen to us, and the things that happen in general, and the whys, and the hows, and the whens, and all of that, it's a lot of times those are just things that we take on a spiritual level that we might not understand until like way later on, you know?
Right.
And or sometimes not even in this lifetime, if you believe in an afterlife, like I do, like a lot of times we those answers don't come to us logically, there's
Yeah.
nothing really logical about the universe, um, and again, like circling back to soulmates and everything, like we, there's an, I just don't believe in coincidences, like we are always led to like a specific person or circumstance right when we're supposed to, I believe,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not, a lot of times it's not good. It's not a good time. It's not a good relationship, right? But we
Hmm.
learn and we grow so much from it by the
Yeah.
end, or going through it or whatever. And that's kind of like a boat that I'm in right now is like dealing with, friends that are not what that don't embody what I would like in a friendship, right?
Sure.
And it's difficult to deal with, and I'm like, why did I meet this person this year and everything was so good and now they're not good
Yeah.
and it's so different and it's like what is going on, and it's like at the end of the day, like I've also became so self-aware of like
Hmm.
my own habits and thinking habits and
Yeah.
behaviors that I desperately have been wanting to change since I was 18,
Right.
and that's really important. Sometimes it's like, what do they call it? A karmic relationship, right? Like
Hmm.
this person comes in and reflects or shows or brings out like these really shitty, excuse my French, shitty
You're
parts
good.
of yourself or your ego and forces you to look at them, and I think that's just as important as the relationships in our lives that show us what love is really like and all of these things, right? Like the good and the bad are just equally as important because they just teach us in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They do. And the funny thing is, like, you said this like incredible, like very well articulated thing, and the thing that's like in my head right now, in my response, and I don't know, maybe it's late, but it's just the idea that like when you swore, you said like excuse my French or something, and like to anyone listening, just for the record, like Jazzlyn speaks fluent French, and like this girl like has her like I don't know if do you still have your phone in French?
I do have my phone in French.
Yeah, so like literally I'm like looking up directions or something like on her phone once, and I'm like, why do I not understand what I'm reading? Because it's in French. So yeah, I
No,
just
that
like
happens
internally
so
laughed.
often. Like if I'm like
Yeah.
driving with a friend and they're like, "Oh, put in the directions," and the directions are like in my phone, they're like,
Mm-hmm.
why is Siri in French?" It's so funny.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, or like you've like sent me like screenshots of stuff, and I'm like, why is this in a different language? So yeah, I just thought that was funny. But you're truly a person of France, as I've famously said. But
I guess I'm not French, by the way.
no, you're not
People
French,
have,
but you speak French and you could pass as a person of France. But
I
anyways,
suppose.
no, I mean, yeah. On a serious note, everything that you said, I do agree with, and I think I don't know, I think it's just interesting, and it's like, to be honest, like we could we have had and could have conversations like this for many hours, but maybe that's a sign that we'll have to do like a part two or something, or you might just have to start a podcast with me or something, and we'll just talk about all the existentialism of life. But
Absolutely. Sounds like a good time.
perfect. But no, I mean, I think you've said a lot of really fascinating and interesting things that I resonate with, and I don't know. To people listening, I think maybe you might either resonate with the things we're talking about, or you might be like, "What the heck are these people talking about?" Like, I don't understand it. And I think that like the invitation is like, if you are like that's kind of out there, or like I don't get it or whatever, just really sit with yourself after listening to this. Like, think about some of the things that we've talked about, or think about some of the ideas, or just think about like the intentionality of your life and the way that you kind of carry yourself and your relationships and your personal relationships, family relationships, working relationships, whatever, and just like really focus in on those things. But no, I mean, I think this has been a really good conversation. I know that we talked about kind of like the detriments of social media, and I know like in general you're not like a big social media person, but like I always ask every guest, like, is there any like social media or anything that you want to put out there if anyone wants to follow your journey or connect with you and say hi or something? Like, is there anything that you do want to, I guess you could say, plug or promote, or are you kind of off the social media game for a minute?
You know what's funny? I keep like downloading and then I deactivate Instagram like once every week and a
Yeah.
half, I feel like. But you know, my Instagram is at jazz.imani. That's jazz.ymani. And my TikTok is Call Me Jazzlyn, which is at Call Me Jazzlyn. And those are probably honestly the only two social medias that I'm like really on right now. I'm trying to just like detox from
Yeah.
being obsessed and attached to the social media world. But yeah.
Yeah, rightfully so. Okay. I will I will put those in the description. So if anyone, wants to check out Jazzlyn and see what she's doing, or just like say, hey, like you said something really like thought provoking on the podcast, like reach out, let her know, and either you will find her socials or they will say deactivated and not in existence. I cannot promise you that they will be active at that time, but if I mean,
They'll be active. They'll be active.
yes, okay, then they will be active. Um, but no, I mean, yeah, go, say hey, or follow along in her journey. I think that I've been really fortunate and lucky to meet a lot of great people personally, professionally in my life, and pick a lot of people's brains. And obviously, I've had quite a few guests on this podcast and stuff, which grateful for every single interaction and connection. But I think that I can fully say that just the ability to connect with Jaslyn has been something that I really cherish and greatly have grown from and just benefit from. So I think that even just like if you again, going back to surrounding yourself with energy that is helpful or beneficial or helps you grow, I think that even just like just following or connecting with, I think it's something that people will benefit from. I know that I certainly have. So I only have good things to say about you and the time that I've been able to get to know you and connect with you. So yeah, definitely go check her out if you want to. But Jaslyn, is there any last thoughts or words or message or anything that you give to the people listening?
Um, that was like the nicest thing that anyone's ever said to me. So thank you.
Yeah.
But no, I think, I'm sure there'll be a part two. So
Yeah.
I don't think I have too much left to say today.
Okay. So then I'm gonna ask everyone listening to let us know if you want a part two. I'm sure we could do a part two at any time, or I'm sure like if you could just hit record on a regular conversation, we have, it would probably be a part two, even though it might be like a 4 hour long podcast. But
or
yeah,
7. Yeah.
is that the length, the longest conversation we've had? About 7 hours, I think.
I think it was like one of my first couple nights in LA. We used to have like 7-hour
Yeah.
phone calls. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was definitely that stretch of a couple like 7 hour phone calls, and just the other day, what we had like a 3 hour phone call or something. And
Yeah, and that was
when
one of our
we,
shortest.
I know it was, and um, back when you're in Michigan, like I feel like anytime we got together, it'd be for like 7 hours. So yeah, the point
So
being
many
is
hours.
we have a lot that we could talk about, the good, the bad, the ugly, the highs, the lows of life, everything. So definitely let us know if you want a part two. I'm sure it's, whether you want it or not, it's gonna come at some point. But
Yeah.
no, thank you again for your time and for just sharing your experiences, your story, your thoughts, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Thank you for allowing me to come on here and talk about all these things. It was so fun.
Of course. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.